Let's call the Tuesday, July 6, 2021 meeting of the Dalton City Council to order. For the last time, Mr. Wall will lead us in the pledge.
Here we go. I have to zoom in. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Unfortunately, that was the last time, and we got special recognition of Council Member Derek Wall. As you can see his sign back here, the respect that we hold really high for him. We didn't even spell his name right. Now, who did that?
I'd like to move.
Yeah.
I'd like to move.
Who did that?
I'd like to move that whoever is responsible for that is censured.
That won't be the last time that you're not held in great esteem sometimes.
Trust me, it's not the first either.
We'll see what happens after your first year at Marist if they don't win the right amount of championships or whatever down there. With that, Derek, number one, what he brought to Dalton in 2011, didn't it, when you came? 2011?
February 1st, 2012.
2012. At Dalton State College started their athletic program back. And obviously within 3 years or 4 years, they won the national championship. And when I was out at the Trade Center, when we were renaming a portion of Battlefield Parkway to Tony Engle Parkway, I said then that Derek was so famous. And the reason we're not naming a street then, we named a street for Derek even before he ever came here, anticipating his great arrival. And with that, Derek, we've heard that you wanted to sign, so now you've got to sign.
And I told Andrew this will prevent me from stealing a street sign as I leave Dalton and committed an offense.
Also, here's wow.
Wow. Trying to get it right. Well, I was going to say that clearly Bernadette was not in charge of this because it is spelled correctly. And I just want to.
I did that one too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I just want to take a moment to thank all of you all for welcoming me in. You know, I was not on city council for a long time, but I feel like I've been at least a part of this community for a long time. And although I'm excited about the move, I will always be a Daltonian at heart. And I've really just enjoyed the place, but more than the place, I've enjoyed the people. To me, that's what it's all about. So everyone has been absolutely fantastic. I thank you for this. I thank you for the street sign, and I just thank you all, and I thank Dalton for everything you've meant to myself and our family.
Mr. Mayor, also, we will never forget Derek because of that beautiful statue of him at the Dalton Convention Center.
Where's this statue? I've never seen a statue.
Downstairs.
That's not even a bust is of famous people. That's a head. It's just a head sitting there. There's no statue out there.
Well, a head statue.
That said, obviously Derek's done a wonderful job in his 18 months on the city council, but that will be easier to replace than he and his family is going to be for Dalton, leaving Dalton after 10 years here. He was a huge addition for multiple reasons, not just as the athletic director at Dalton State or on the city council, but all the volunteer hours he's put in to this community over the last almost 10 years. And that will be the hardest to replace. There'll be cake after the meeting outside in the atrium. So everybody stay, please, as we celebrate and are sad about Derek's departure. Minutes of the meeting before you, June 21st, 2021 meeting minutes. Motion by Ms. Harlan.
Second.
Second by Mr. or who said that?
I read.
Mr. Goodlett, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Under new business number 3, agreement for the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act between Georgia Department of Transportation and City of Dalton for Dalton Municipal Airport. You know that, Jason?
Yes, sir, Mayor. This is the city's acceptance of the 2021 federal coronavirus allocation for airports. There was funding in that bill for federally funded airports in Georgia. It's a pass-through to the Georgia Department of Transportation in the amount of $23,000. It's 100% federal funds with no local match required. And a wide range of eligible uses are available. And this authorization of this acceptance of this grant will allow the airport authority with guidance from city finance to apply the funds in the most effective manner. So this is accepting those funds for the appropriate uses.
Any questions of Jason? Your motion on this? Motion by Mr. Weil, second by Ms. Harlan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Number 4, Resolution 21-06, resolution of the mayor and the city council of the city of Dalton, Georgia, authorizing the chief financial officer, city administrator, and mayor to execute certain documents required to accept local recovery assistance funds under the American Rescue Plan Act and for other purposes. What you do, Jason?
Yes, sir, Mayor. This authorizes the mayor to sign the document and also the CFO and city administrator to open the bank accounts, prepare the projects to recommend to mayor and council in going forward in the future to develop grant programs if the council so deems it necessary, and to be able to pay for the projects and file the appropriate reports to the Department of Treasury. The city's received so far $4.4 million, about 50% of its allocation.
Questions? Your motion on this?
Moved.
Motion by Mr. Goodlett. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Harlan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Number 5, ordinance 21-10, the request of Jose Morales to rezone from heavy manufacturing M2 to general commercial C2, a tract of land totaling .4 acres located at 716-720 North Hamilton Street, East Long Street, parcels 12-20-200-17-004, 12-200-17-006, 12-200-200-007. Ethan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This particular rezoning here was not a terribly complicated one. This is an area that is heavily zoned with the manufacturing M2 zone district, but it's kind of at one of those areas that is adjoining residential and a lot of commercial development that may have just been swallowed up by that M2 district from the previous zoning ordinance. This property, if you take a look at it, is very much a commercial property, not so much manufacturing. It's certainly very small, and the building that is on it is very much commercial in character. The request was for general commercial. Staff recommendation was for C1 neighborhood commercial, and that still met the needs of the petitioner, who was just looking to get permits to operate a commercial style, retail and things like that from the building, and could not do that as it's currently zoned. And they were just looking for some more flexibility. So we thought that the C1 zone district is the better fit because of the adjacent residential properties and just the general kind of theme in the area and the zone district that we'd like to see in this particular area to help promote as a catalyst investment into this area. And so the recommendation was to approve. Staff and the Planning Commission heard no opposition, and the Planning Commission agreed with the staff analysis and recommended and approved unanimous.
Any questions of Ethan? Your motion on this?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Harlan, second by Mr. Goodlett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Number 6, 21-11, the request of Norwood et al. To annex the tract of land of totaling 2.0 acres located at 2100 Cleveland Highway into the city of Dalton, parcel 12-126-06-001. Ethan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This particular item here is an annexation, and the annexation is sought. The petitioner was very open that the intent here is to operate a package store on the subject property. And to do so, the only way that that would be possible would be to annex it into the city of Dalton. And upon further research into the subject property and the request, the necessary zoning to be able to operate a package store under the unified zoning ordinance with the least intrusive would be neighborhood commercial, which is what the property is already zoned for. And so that's any type of essential retail and low intensity services, not things like auto mechanic shops and things like that in that zone district. So staff certainly preferred that zone district remain the same if the property is to be annexed. In regard to specifically annexation, it is flanked by the city of Dalton on at least one side, and very much in an area where there are numerous properties already in the incorporated area of the city. Staff saw no issues with annexation and outreach to various departments. And there was one note that I wanted to make, and that was the access limitations previously on this property from back in 2014. The Board of Commissioners rezoned this property from residential to neighborhood commercial. There was a significant amount of opposition to that at the time. And of course, as you can see, the property is still vacant, has not been developed for commercial. One of the great limiting factors that was placed on this property at that time was a limitation of access. That limiting access was that no commercial traffic could access Beulah Drive. It would have to access Cleveland Highway. And upon research done by the petitioner as well as staff, we were able to determine that the only way that they could access Cleveland Highway with the Department of Transportation's regulations would be to get some sort of a variance to put in a decel lane. Currently, it's not a thing that's going to work out very easily for the petitioner to be able to obtain that and to be able to establish a decel lane off of Cleveland Highway. And of course, that also creates another conflict point near the intersection. Staff recommendation was to approve the annexation and did not include that limitation to Beulah Drive. And it was of our opinion that the rezoning action that an annexation would carry would essentially create a null and void stance on that issue from the previous rezoning done by the county commissioners a number of years ago. So unless the city council places that as a condition on the property, that would move forward and allow access then to Beulah Drive for the commercial traffic that would be patrons of the proposed store or any store that could be located on the property in C1. There were several individuals that spoke in opposition. They were concerned about traffic as well as just the instance of having a package store in the community of that area. And there were, I think, 3 individuals that spoke in opposition and a number of other neighbors that were there that sort of agreed with that. So we did hear opposition, but the Planning Commission felt that the annexation met the necessary requirements. And since no rezoning would be necessary, recommended that the property be annexed into the city unanimously. I'm happy to answer any questions.
The concerns that the neighbors have are not about annexation, which is the question that's before this body. It was a concern that there's going to be a package store, but that's not what that does. They don't have any objection to annexation.
No, there was no objection made specifically to annexation. There were concern with other things like I mentioned, traffic, which again, with the property already being zoned commercial, there was a whole list of commercial property uses that could take place on the property without it being annexed. It's just the specific needs of the petitioner would not be met in that case.
So will they have an access point off Cleveland Highway and the side street or just one?
They do not have access to Cleveland Highway, and to get access to Cleveland Highway, it would be they would incur an enormous expense and have to go through a lot of trouble to make that
They
happen.
have sufficient parking that would be required under.
The site plan indicated that they would be able to meet all those. They've hired an architect and submitted a preliminary sort of site plan for that. And they've run into a number of issues on the property with easements, I believe, utility easements and things like that, but they have managed to make the design work so far. And staff's opinion was that the traffic entering and exiting from Beulah Drive, because it's immediately at the intersection of Cleveland Highway, would essentially have little to no impact on the residential community. It's not a through street. So you don't really have to worry about people taking shortcuts through the neighborhood and things like that. It should be directly off of Cleveland Highway and directly back on.
Questions? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Goodley, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Harlan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Number 7, first reading ordinance 21-12 to declare, authorize, and approve residential nuisance property abatement through administrative process in lieu of judicial process in certain circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. As you all know, we've been working over the last year to retool a lot of our nuisance ordinances as well as our refuse ordinance in an effort to clean up the city. And what we've recognized in working with code enforcement is that we have several dwellings and structures throughout the city that are unfit for human habitation and not in compliance with state code as well as international property maintenance code. And so we worked with the city attorney since the last nuisance meeting to create an administrative process that would be put in place under the dangerous building section of city code, which is chapter 22, section 421, 422. And what this would do is create a section 423. As you said, it would create an administrative process for the city to intervene on these structures and perform demolition in certain circumstances. It would give the city administrator and public works director the authority to abate these nuisance if the following conditions have been met. The subject tract or dwelling has to be residential in nature. So if it's commercial, we would still go through more of a formal judicial process through nuisance abatement action through the city attorney, municipal court. This only applies to residential structures. Second condition is that the interested parties, so whoever has the structure, a lot of times they can't afford the expense of bringing in a private contractor to do the demolition and haul off. They've got to consent to the abatement for the city to come on their property, provide an easement, and agree to the demolition. And then the final condition is that they have to agree to repay the city's hard costs, which would be the landfill tipping fees, in addition to any environmental abatement cost and inspection costs. We're currently working with Chief Pangle to try to get somebody on staff to do asbestos inspections. That will further help reduce the cost if we can get somebody on staff rather than contracting that service out. And the reason we're recommending this process from a staff level is two reasons. It would make the process more expedient in terms of being able to clear the structure from the property, and it would save the city and the property owner considerable expenses to avoid the judicial process and not have to take that before municipal court. I will say that this was brought before the Public Works Committee at its June meeting, and they provided approval for it to come before this body. Be glad to answer any questions.
We'll be able to tear down houses faster.
Absolutely.
Well, we got 3 so far since I've been
I
back.
think we've got about 8 right now that have.
No, we're actually torn down and removed.
Oh, 3, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
And
yeah, we need to move faster. We got plenty more to tear down.
that's right.
Your motion on this?
So moved.
First.
But it's a
Ms.
first
Harvey.
reading, just a first reading.
Oh, it's first reading, okay. We'll take it up in the next meeting in July. 8, this is first reading, ordinance 21-13, amending the unified zoning ordinance. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A slightly different item here in that the proposed amendments to the unified zoning ordinance would have the potential to change the actual text of the ordinance, and which would affect, of course, all zone districts or a number of zone districts and aspects. And I think everyone has the handout and has probably had a chance to read through that. No worries, I'm not going to go through item by item, but there were just a couple of points. The change to townhouses was essentially just to be in alignment with building fire code. It has made some changes to that, which is a really great change, I think, aesthetically. And no longer have to have the firewall, the masonry wall that extends above the roof line by several feet. So it makes a more attractive housing product in the townhouse characteristic. So that's just changing a simple definition. But the biggest thing here are the accessory structures and the changes that were made there in order for individuals who potentially may have a job as a contractor or an artisan or something like that to be able to bring home certain things like, for instance, a work truck, like a 1-ton truck vehicle that may be their utility vehicle, and their sort of tools and things like that they may use in their job. Like we had a brick mason issue that came up recently, is where this originated from, and we determined that individuals that operate businesses like that don't have per se a large building to store their things in, we're not currently legally able to bring those vehicles home and bring those tools home. So we suggested to make some changes to the ordinance to allow that, but without opening up the Pandora's box to allow essentially for commercial use of properties. So there can't be business done on the property and things like that. This is simply for individuals who may be able to drive a work truck home or bring some of their tools of the trade home with them. They must be stored inside the accessory structures. And we put several limiting factors on that to make sure that people weren't developing residential lots solely for the storage of equipment, that this would be an ancillary use to the residential use of the property. And one of the things that we put in there as a measure was that there must be a single family dwelling on the property, and at no point can an accessory structure that's storing these type of tools be larger than the home itself. And we also put a cap on 1,500 square feet. So it's either smaller than the dwelling or no larger than 1,500 square feet if they do have a significant dwelling and larger lot size. And there are other provisions there about height and limitations that keep that in check as well. And no more than 2 vehicles. And the limitation that changed was that the original staff recommendation was 7,100 pounds. It was determined at the public hearing by several individuals that we would need that to be 10,000 pounds because modern 1-ton trucks, you know, the through 350s, 3,500s and things like that are around 10,000 or right about 10,000 pounds. So we did recommend upping that. So that does not include the very large commercial vehicles. So this is again for smaller, more artisan style individuals, plumbers and things like that that may have their own small business. And that is in a nutshell that particular part of the ordinance. And I'm happy to answer before I move forward any questions that y'all might have in regard to that.
Andrew, just one point. I'm sorry, Ethan, just one point. That those apply in the R5 and suburban agricultural and general agricultural zone districts, correct?
Correct. That is correct, which the city has very little of. Very little of. And the next item on that you'll notice starts out very clearly that it does not include the city of Dalton. And that's the change to the animals section of the ordinance where it talks about livestock keeping and things like that. So that simply will change the county and the city of Arnell for them. That will not apply to the city of Dalton. And the last item to note, or second to last item, is the amending the appendix of the zoning ordinance, specifically in procedures and standards, in order to ensure that once a public hearing has been held and a recommendation has been given by the Planning Commission, a rezoning petition cannot be withdrawn at that point. That action must occur at the final level, whether that be the county or either cities, in order to uphold the intent of the procedures and standards. And that is that if an item or if a petition is denied a rezoning, in the unified zoning ordinance, that requires 12 months must go by before another petition can be put into order. And so this would ensure that process be upheld and there's no loopholes there. So that's just a very simple change to the procedures and standards. Anyone happen to have any questions regarding that? And last but not least, a simple change to the permitted use table in order to allow the micro breweries, brew pubs, micro wineries, and just micro distilleries in the M1 and M2 zone districts. It's a zone district that's again quite common in the city, and we simply did not initially anticipate as much interest in that particular field as there is now, and did not want to limit that particular use strictly to commercial areas when they are essentially manufacturing items. Our products. So we made that recommendation, and that all of these received unanimous approval with the simple change of the vehicle weight to 10,000 pounds, which I believe is in the resolution. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
This too is a first reading. We'll take this up at the second meeting in July. Thank you, Ethan. Next on the agenda is appointment of the city administrator. Obviously, this must be somebody sitting out in front of me to bring Benny Dunn back, whatever. We'll always be in Benny's debt for bringing Andrew to the city to begin with. There a motion on this?
Make a motion that Andrew Parker be appointed as the city administrator effective August 12th.
Motion by Ms. Harlan, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goodlet. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. There be no supplemental business before us, so I'll entertain a motion, we adjourn. We're adjourned.